I was 19 when an 8-year-old held a kitchen knife to my throat because I took his iPad after he beat me with a baseball bat over cold McDonald's fries. His parents paid my entire semester's tuition to keep quiet, but the agreement was verbal, so I took the money, sued them, and then they assembled a legal team to destroy my medical career. I was 19 when I took a babysitting job just to earn enough money for one textbook and found myself caring for little Satan himself, who hospitalized me. His family owned one of those mega McMansions where the driveway had its own roundabout and the glasses were made of real glass. Mrs. Tinky said her son Blake was 8 and spirited, which should have been my first red flag. She handed me a credit card for emergencies and left for their charity gala in a dress that probably cost more than my tuition. Blake was sitting on the couch playing on his iPad when I introduced myself. He looked up for exactly 1 second before going back to his game. I asked what he wanted for dinner, and he said McDonald's without looking away from the screen. Not a problem since they'd left the credit card. I pulled up DoorDash on my phone and asked what he wanted. He rattled off an order that included 2 Big Macs, a 20-piece nugget, and a large fry plus a milkshake. I placed the order figuring he wouldn't eat it all anyway. While we waited, he didn't say a single word to me, just sat there playing some loud farting game. The food arrived 40 minutes later, and I brought it to the living room. The second he opened the bag, his face turned red, and he started screaming that the fries were cold. Not just complaining, but actually screaming like someone just told him Kai Cenat died. I tried to calm him down and offered to heat them up in the microwave. He threw the entire bag of food at the wall and nuggets went flying everywhere. The milkshake exploded on impact and started dripping down their expensive wallpaper. I stood there shocked while this 8-year-old had a complete meltdown over lukewarm fries. He kept screaming that I was the worst babysitter ever, and he wanted his real nanny back. Things escalated when he grabbed his toy baseball bat from the corner. At first I thought he was just going to hit the couch or something, but then he came at me. He started whacking my shins with his metal bat while screaming about his cold fries. It actually hurt, and I had to grab a couch cushion to block him. This kid was literally attacking me over McDonald's. I managed to grab the bat away from him and told him he was going in timeout. He laughed in my face and said, "Timeout was for babies." When I reached for his iPad, he went absolutely feral. He bit my hand hard enough to leave marks and tried to kick me in the stomach. I finally got the iPad away and put it on top of the refrigerator where he couldn't reach it. He followed me to the kitchen, still screaming and throwing things. I told him he could have the iPad back when he calmed down and apologized. His face went from red to purple and he said, "You don't know who my dad is. He'll fire you and sue you and you'll be poor forever." This 8-year-old was threatening me with lawsuits like a tiny corporate villain. I turned my back for 1 second to clean up some of the milkshake mess. When I turned around, Blake was standing there holding a kitchen knife. Not a butter knife, but an actual sharp knife from the knife block. He held it up and said in the calmest voice, "Give me my iPad or say night-night." My heart stopped because this kid looked serious, and I was genuinely scared he might actually do something. I tried to stay calm and spoke softly, asking him to put the knife down. He took a step closer and waved it around, saying he knew how to use it because he played Among Us. I kept backing up, trying to figure out how to get the knife away from an 8-year-old without anyone getting hurt. He was between me and the door, so I couldn't just run out and call for help. Finally, I pretended to agree and said I'd get his iPad if he put the knife on the counter first. He thought about it, then set it down, but kept his hand near it. The second he looked away, I lunged forward and grabbed the knife. In the struggle, I twisted my ankle badly and fell to the floor. Blake started laughing hysterically, pointing at me while I lay there in pain, unable to walk. I managed to crawl to my phone and called his parents. Mrs. Tinky answered, sounding annoyed, until I told her about the knife. They said they'd be home in 20 minutes. I dragged myself to the couch, keeping the knife with me, while Blake sat on the stairs still laughing about my ankle. When his parents walked in, I was holding ice on my foot while their son played with toys like nothing happened. Mr. Tinky listened to the whole story, then walked over to Blake. Without saying a word, he picked up the baseball bat, walked to where I'd put the iPad, and smashed it to pieces. Blake's laughter turned to shocked silence, then hysterical crying. His dad said, "You threatened someone with a knife over a game. You don't deserve anything." They paid for my emergency room visit, and when they found out I was pre-med, they offered to pay my entire semester's tuition if I didn't sue them or tell anyone what happened. I agreed. But guess what? The agreement was verbal, so I took the money and still told everyone and their mama. Plus I sued them. Now they're hella mad, assembling a team of lawyers to try fight me. The first letter from their lawyers arrived 3 days later. I was sitting in my dorm room trying to study for my anatomy exam when my roommate knocked and handed me the thick envelope. The return address showed some fancy law firm with 5 names that sounded like a tongue twister. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was full of legal terms, but the message was clear. They claimed I had violated our verbal agreement and demanded I retract all public statements immediately. They also wanted me to drop the lawsuit or face serious consequences. I set the letter aside and tried to focus on my textbook, but the words kept swimming on the page. My ankle still throbbed from the injury, and I had to wear a brace to class. The medical bills were already piling up, even though the Tinkies had promised to cover everything. Their insurance company kept calling, asking for more documentation and finding reasons to delay payment. I started keeping all the paperwork in a folder that grew thicker every day. The next morning I found a note slipped under my door. No envelope, just a folded piece of paper with typed words. It said they knew my class schedule and where I studied at the library. They knew which coffee shop I went to between classes. The message ended with a suggestion that accidents could happen to careless people who didn't watch where they were going. My stomach churned as I realized they were having me watched. I started taking different routes to class and stopped going to my usual study spots. But everywhere I went, I felt eyes on me. A man in a suit seemed to appear wherever I studied. A woman with sunglasses sat at nearby tables in every cafe I tried. When I mentioned it to my roommate, she said I was being paranoid, but I knew better. The Tinkies were trying to intimidate me into silence. My pre-med advisor called me into her office later that week. She said there had been concerns raised about my character and reliability as a future physician. Someone had sent an anonymous letter claiming I was mentally unstable and had a history of making false accusations. She showed me the letter, and my heart sank. It was typed on expensive paper with perfect grammar. The Tinkies were trying to sabotage my medical career before it even started. I explained the whole situation to my advisor, showing her photos of my injuries and the medical reports. She listened carefully, then advised me to be very careful. The Tinkies had connections throughout the city, including several hospital board members. If I wanted to pursue medicine in this area, I needed to think about the long-term consequences of this fight. Her words felt like another threat, even though I knew she meant well. That weekend, my mom called crying. Someone had sent her employer photos of me at parties from freshman year, making it look like I was some kind of wild party girl. The photos were real, but taken completely out of context. One showed me holding a red Solo cup at a birthday party, but they'd cropped out the birthday cake and decorations. Another showed me laughing with friends, but the angle made it look like I was stumbling hammered. Her boss had questioned whether she'd raised me right. I drove home immediately to show her the truth. We sat at the kitchen table going through my phone to find the original photos with full context. My mom believed me, but the damage was done. Her coworkers were gossiping and giving her strange looks. The Tinkies were attacking not just me, but my family too. My dad wanted to confront them directly, but I begged him not to. They were dangerous people with unlimited resources. Back at school, I noticed my friends starting to act strange. My study group suddenly had scheduling conflicts whenever I tried to join. People who usually sat with me at lunch made excuses to sit elsewhere. Finally, my friend Sarah pulled me aside and told me the truth. Someone had been spreading rumors that I was sue happy and would turn on anyone for money. They said I'd probably sue the university next, or maybe my friends if they looked at me wrong. I tried to explain, but the damage was spreading like wildfire. In a small pre-med program, reputation was everything. Everyone was competing for the same limited spots in medical school. The Tinkies had found the perfect pressure point. If they could turn my peers against me, I'd have no support system and no future in medicine. The stress was affecting my grades, and I failed my first anatomy quiz. My phone started getting strange calls at all hours. Sometimes silence, sometimes breathing, sometimes a child's voice saying creepy things about knives and iPads. I changed my number, but the calls started again within days. My social media accounts got hacked, and someone posted horrible things before I could delete them. Even after I explained the hack, people remembered the posts. I'm really curious about how an 8-year-old knows exactly what to say about lawsuits and being poor forever. That's oddly specific language for a kid that age. Makes me wonder what kind of conversations happen in that house regularly. The Tinkies were erasing my digital reputation piece by piece. The breaking point came when my scholarship committee requested a meeting. Someone had raised concerns about my character, and they needed to investigate. I sat in front of 5 professors explaining the situation while they took notes. They said they'd need time to review everything, but in the meantime, my scholarship was frozen. Without that money, I couldn't afford next semester. The Tinkies were trying to force me out of school entirely. I spent that night writing down everything that had happened, every threat, every incident, every piece of harassment. The folder of evidence grew thicker, but I felt more alone than ever. My support system was crumbling, and the Tinkies seemed to have unlimited ways to make my life miserable. They wanted me to break, to give up, and slink away in defeat. Part of me wondered if fighting them was worth losing everything I'd worked for. But then I remembered Blake's smug face as he held that knife. I remembered his parents' assumption that money could buy their way out of anything. They thought they could crush me because I was just some poor college student who needed textbook money. That anger gave me strength to keep going. I started researching the family, learning everything I could about their business connections and social circles. If they wanted to fight, I'd give them one. My breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The Tinkies' housekeeper reached out through a mutual friend. She'd worked for them for 10 years and had stories about Blake's behavior that would make anyone's hair stand on end. She told me about the 3 nannies who'd quit after Blake attacked them. The tutor he'd bitten so badly she needed stitches. The neighbor's kid he'd pushed down the stairs. Each time the Tinkies paid for silence and swept it under the rug. She gave me contact information for some of the former employees. Most were too scared to talk, but 2 agreed to meet me secretly. They shared their experiences and showed me their own scars from Blake's violence. One had photos of bruises and bite marks. Another had kept a journal documenting the incidents. They'd all signed NDAs but were willing to risk speaking out if it meant stopping Blake before he seriously hurt someone. I started building a case file with all their statements and evidence. The pattern was clear and disturbing. Blake had been violent for years, and his parents just threw money at the problem. They'd created a monster by never holding him accountable. Now they were using the same tactics on me, thinking money and intimidation would make me disappear. But I had something they didn't expect. I had the truth, and others willing to share it. The Tinkies must have sensed the shift because their tactics escalated. I found my car tires slashed in the campus parking lot. Security cameras conveniently malfunctioned that night. My laptop got stolen from the library while I used the bathroom. Thankfully, I backed up everything to the cloud, but losing the computer meant I couldn't work on assignments. Every day brought new obstacles designed to break my spirit and drain my resources. Then came the betrayal that almost broke me. My best friend Marcus, who'd been supporting me through everything, suddenly turned cold. He said he couldn't afford to be associated with me anymore. His internship at the hospital was at risk because someone on the board had connections to the Tinkies. He had to think about his future. I begged him to reconsider, but he walked away. Losing his friendship hurt worse than all the other attacks combined. I sat in my dorm room that night feeling completely defeated. The Tinkies had systematically destroyed my life in just a few weeks. My grades were suffering, my scholarship was frozen, my reputation was ruined, and even my best friend had abandoned me. Maybe they were right. Maybe I should just give up and move on. Sign whatever they wanted and try to salvage what was left of my future. But as I sat there wallowing in self-pity, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of Blake at his expensive private school playground. He was holding another kid in a headlock while teachers rushed to intervene. The message said this had happened yesterday, and the parent